You won't believe what happened next. A man who's built an entire legacy on keeping quiet finally decided to speak, and he did it to honor another giant. At 73, the most famously reserved cowboy in country music looked back across 5 decades and tipped his hat to a fellow legend who shook up the genre in his own way. It wasn't a flashy press tour or a headline-chasing stunt. It was simple, human, and honest. And once he started, the stories flowed. Small-town roots, army grit, heartbreak, rodeo dust, sold-out stadiums, and at the center of it all, a humble superstar paying respect to a friend gone too soon. You ready? Let's ride. Most folks first learn the name George Strait through a song, maybe a slow two-step in a dimly lit dance hall, maybe a radio sing-along on a long drive through open country. But the story starts long before the neon and the noise. He was born in Petite, Texas, and raised down the road in Pearsall, where Friday nights were for football and Sundays were for family. The sky felt wider out there, the days a little slower. When you grow up in a place like that, you learn your manners early. Look people in the eye, keep your word, and don't brag, ever. That's the kind of soil that grows a life like his. Music arrived the way it always does in small towns, on vinyl, on AM radio, and in the hands of older folks who'd lived some life. Hank Williams, Merle Haggard, George Jones, those voices weren't just songs, they were maps. They taught timing, storytelling, and that little crack in a note you can't fake. If you've ever heard George Strait stretch a line until it lands just right, you can hear those ghosts in there, steady as a heartbeat. Now, before the chart toppers and the record books, there was a young man in a crisp uniform. Right out of high school, George Strait enlisted in the United States Army. The discipline fit him. The structure sharpened him. He did his time honorably stationed in Hawaii, where the ocean is loud and the sunsets look painted on. Even there, country music called. He joined an Army-sponsored band, Rambling Country, and found a stage presence that was unflashy but magnetic like a ranch gate that never squeaks. When you watch him perform later in life, you can still spot the soldier, boots planted, shoulders square, eyes level, nothing forced, nothing wasted. After his service, and he came back to Texas and did something wonderfully ordinary for a future megastar. He went to school. He studied agriculture at what's now Texas State University in San Marcos. Think about that: cattle, crops, and country music. That's not a brand, that's a backbone. By day, classes; by night, honky-tonks. He wasn't trying to reinvent anything, just trying to play it honest, and that became the whole point. Then came 1981. If you enjoy origin stories, this one's a favorite. A first single called Unwound hit the airwaves like it had been waiting its whole life to be heard. It climbed the charts, sure, but more than that, it announced a new kind of old school. Slick pop-leaning country was starting to dominate, and here was George Strait. Hat pulled down, voice clean as a front porch wind, bringing back the snap of a fiddle and the ache of a steel guitar. The first album arrived with a title that felt like a mission statement. Strait Country. No frills, no apology. Just a reminder of where the music came from and where he aimed to take it. The hits didn't trickle in, they rolled. Amarillo by morning turned truck stops into choirs. The Chair gave a masterclass in charm with nothing more than a conversation that felt overheard. Oceanfront property, carrying your love with me, I cross my heart. Different tempos, different stories, same signature feel, simple words, big feelings, melodies that stick without trying. And here's the wild part. This wasn't a streak that burned hot and faded. This was a decades-long run. 60 number ones across the country charts, stadiums filled, records sold by the tens of millions, awards stacked up, Entertainer of the Year more than once, a seat in the Country Music Hall of Fame by 2006, and respect that money can't buy. But the most striking thing, how little he seemed to change. In an industry that feeds on drama, George Strait stayed quiet. He let the songs do the talking. He took the long view. He kept his private life private. In an era when everyone's got a camera on themselves, he didn't. That restraint, call it dignity, call it discipline, became part of his mystique. Fans didn't feel shut out. They felt entrusted with the art. And yet, behind that calm surface, there's a life as full as any ballad. Let's roll the years back to 1971. A young George Strait and his high school sweetheart made a decision that changed everything. They slipped across the border into Mexico and got married. No press, no parade, just George and Norma Strait, 2 kids in love choosing each other on their own terms. That quiet start set the tone for the next 5 decades. Whenever he's asked about stability, about how he kept his head while the world spun faster, it always comes back to Norma. The constant, the anchor, the friend who tells you the truth and loves you anyway. Their first child, Jennifer Lynn Strait, was born in 1972, and for a while, life looked like a postcard. A rising career, a close family, home cooking, road miles made easier by laughter. Then the unimaginable. In 1986, at just 13, Jennifer died in a car accident in San Marcos. That sort of loss doesn't have language. It changes the air in a house. George Strait, never much for oversharing, retreated even further from interviews. He put his feelings where he always had, into the music and into the quiet work of doing good. He and Norma started the Jennifer Lynn Strait Foundation to help children in need around San Antonio. Education, health, the arts. Not a press release kind of charity, a roll-up-your-sleeves kind of charity. When you understand that piece of the story, the steady tone in his voice makes sense. That calm isn't emptiness, it's depth. A few years later, the Straits welcomed a son, George Harvey Bubba Strait Jr. If you've ever seen a father at the edge of an arena, eyes narrowed against the dust, palms pressed to the rail, you know what George looked like watching Bubba rope. Bubba took the Texas way seriously. College at Texas A&M, competitive team roping with the Professional Rodeo Cowboys Association, the whole deal. Here's this world-famous singer, about to play to tens of thousands, sitting in the stands quietly as his son chases down a dream for 8 seconds at a time. That's country. That's family. That's perspective. The big tours kept getting bigger, but he still did things the straight way. His farewell run, cleverly framed because it never meant farewell to the music, was called The Cowboy Rides Away, and it closed with a blowout in Arlington, Texas that packed in over 100,000 fans. Biggest indoor show in North America at the time, the kind of night people pass down as a story. Your granddad and I were there. After that, he didn't vanish. He just got selective, special shows, Vegas residencies, home state moments that felt personal, not manufactured, always the same posture, boots planted, hat brimlow, songs first. Now here's where the twist comes in. For a man who rarely weighs in on industry drama or public debates, George Strait did something unexpected as he stepped into his 70s. He spoke from the heart about another titan, Toby Keith. And it hit people hard, because it wasn't just professional courtesy. It sounded like gratitude. Roll back your mental radio to the early 90s and you'll hear that baritone cut through. Toby Keith storming out of the gate with big hooks and bigger presence. Not the same lane as George Strait, more rock in the engine, more swagger in the stance, but undeniably country, undeniably his. Should have been a cowboy, turned into one of those songs you couldn't escape even if you wanted to. Then came the anthems that split dinner tables and still packed arenas, courtesy of the red, white, and blue, the angry American, an American soldier. Love him, argue with him. Either way, you felt something. That was Toby's power. He wrote like he'd swallowed a live wire. So picture George Strait, the genre's quiet North Star, reflecting on a man who did it loud and proud. He didn't talk about charts first. He talked about guts, about how Toby Keith never ducked a tough topic, about the way a song can carry working folks through long shifts and long drives. He pointed out something important, 2 different styles, one shared purpose. Country music has always been more than one thing. It's the lonesome poet and the Saturday night rebel. It's the cowboy, the drifter, the soldier, the mom in a minivan. There's room for all of it. And then, of course, there's the ache in the room. Toby Keith's fight with stomach cancer and his passing in 2024. Those last years showed a different side of toughness, quiet, steady, dignified. He still wrote. He still showed up. He still smiled that half grin like he knew a secret. When George Strait spoke about that courage, it didn't sound like a press quote. It sounded like one craftsman talking about another who kept working even when the light was fading. That's the part that makes your throat catch. You can almost hear the memory reel running in George's head. Quick hellos, backstage at award shows. A handshake that actually means something. A charity event where the checks are big, but the cause is bigger. An easy laugh between 2 men who know exactly how winding the road can be. They didn't share a tour bus or trade riffs on the same stage every night, but they shared the long arc of a career in a genre that can chew you up if you're not careful. They both figured out how to be themselves without apology. That's rarer than you think. Pause here and ask yourself, what keeps a legend speaking so softly? When George Strait finally opened up about Toby Keith, there was more than praise in his voice. There was time. There was loss. There was the math every person does when the calendar pages start flipping faster. What did we do that mattered? What did we say while we still could? He admitted, in that quiet way of his, that at some point you look back more than you look ahead, and in the looking back you feel the urgency to speak from the heart. Fans felt it too, because whether you lean toward the neo-traditional Texas swing of George Strait or the rowdy, bull-strong energy of Toby Keith, you're still reaching for the same thing, a song that tells the truth about your life, a song you play when you get promoted, when you get dumped, when the baby finally falls asleep, when the flag goes up the pole, when your dad's old truck finally coughed its last. Country music doesn't avoid those moments. It collects them, and these two men helped build the collection. Let's not pretend every mile was smooth. Trends come in waves. In one decade, radio wants big, glossy productions. The next, it wants dusty boots and bar band grit. Through it all, George Strait kept steering the center line. A voice that sang clean, a band that knew how to leave space, a catalog that never chased fads. Toby Keith took a different road. Bold hooks, strong opinions, a stage swagger that made even the cheap seats feel like front row. Both roads led to packed houses, sing-along choruses, and the same destination, people feeling seen. And that's what makes this moment, one legend saluting another, feel bigger than just a quote. It's a reminder that the genre only lives when it makes room. Cowboys and rebels, storytellers and showmen, fiddles and power chords. You don't have to love every flavor to respect the recipe. George Strait made that point with a few careful words and a world of meaning. So what's the legacy, really? For George Strait, it's the sum of 1,000 choices to keep the music first. It's the family that kept him grounded. Norma in the kitchen laughing at something that would never make the tabloids. Bubba tightening a rope while his dad waits for the chute to swing. Jennifer's name living on in quiet acts of generosity across San Antonio. It's the way he showed an entire industry that you can be massive without being loud, that you can sell out a stadium without selling out yourself, that a hat and a smile and a song can be more than an image. They can be a promise kept over and over again. For Toby Keith, it's the sound of a crowd roaring when the first line hits, the way a chorus can turn a divided room into one big voice, the stubborn insistence on doing it his way right to the end. It's telling the world exactly what you think, for better or worse, and trusting the music to sort it out. It's showing up when the body says no, because the song says yes. If you're listening close, you'll hear a deeper note under all of this, a note about time. George Strait is 73 now, a number that looks big on paper and small in a saddle. He still stands tall. He still chooses his words. And when he used those words to honor Toby Keith, he wasn't just talking about a friend, he was talking about what lasts, not the gossip, not the streaming wars, not the costume changes, the work, the courage, the care you take with your art and your people. Here's a thought for the road. Maybe the most country thing George Strait ever did wasn't a song at all. Maybe it was the choice to stay humble when the world kept shouting his name. Maybe it was the choice to love his family out loud, but in private, to grieve with grace, to help without a spotlight, to keep the hat on straight and the set list tight. And maybe the most country thing Toby Keith ever did was to stand up, chest out, and sing the thoughts a million folks were choking on, knowing full well he'd catch heat. Different men, same backbone. Before we wrap, let's circle back to where we started. That rare moment when George Strait decided to speak up. Think how easy it would have been for him to say nothing, just nod, play a song, move along. Instead, he gave us a simple, generous tribute. He told us what he admired, the writing, the fight, the loyalty to fans. He reminded us that there's space in this music for a quiet king and a loud rebel, and that both serve the same audience, people who want to feel something true. And you with the playlist and the miles to go, what song do you reach for when the day needs fixing? Is it a late-night two-step with George Strait keeping time, or windows down holler with Toby Keith lighting the fuse? Drop your pick in the comments. Let the rest of us borrow it on our drive home. If this story moved you, if it made you think about your own people, your own losses, your own victories, do me a favor. Hit that like button so more folks find their way here. Subscribe if you want more long ride stories that cut through the noise. And share this with someone who needs to hear a reminder that integrity still matters, that grace under pressure is still possible, and that country music, at its best, isn't about fame at all. It's about heart. It's about honesty. It's about the stories we leave behind. So here's to George Strait, the quiet hand on the wheel. Here's to Toby Keith, the spark that never apologized for burning bright. And here's to you, wherever you're listening from. May the next song hit you right where you need it. See you on the next ride.